42-year-old Marcus Chen had long ago stopped searching for proof that people were fundamentally decent. As founder and CEO of Chen Biotech Solutions, a medical technology empire valued at $9.7 billion, he'd witnessed enough betrayal, manipulation, and greed to fill a warehouse. His lakefront penthouse in downtown Seattle boasted floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, walls adorned with contemporary art worth small fortunes, and a silence so complete it felt like drowning. He owned properties in 4 states. His timepiece cost more than most families spent on transportation in a decade. Yet each sunrise found him hollow. His late mother, Eleanor Chen, had embedded one principle deep in his psyche. People show you their true nature when they think nobody's watching, Marcus. The desperate ones are the most dangerous. They'll take everything you offer and demand more without shame. Poverty corrupts. It can't help itself. Marcus had carried that conviction like armor for 42 years. Every philanthropic gesture filtered through corporate structures and tax strategists. Every act of generosity calculated for maximum return on reputation. He'd never once confronted hardship directly and simply extended help. Not without contracts. Not without oversight. Not without protecting himself first. But that February morning, something shifted beneath his carefully constructed defenses. He was running late for an emergency investor call, navigating through Pioneer Square Station with his executive assistant maintaining her customary 3-step distance. His cashmere overcoat had cost $7,200. His titanium briefcase contained agreements worth $35 million. His phone vibrated ceaselessly with demands from board members, attorneys, stakeholders, everyone wanting pieces of his attention. Then his eyes found her. Pressed against the weathered concrete wall near the southbound platform sat a woman in her late 20s, exhaustion carved into every angle of her face. A small boy, perhaps 7 years old, lay sleeping across her lap, wrapped in a donated jacket several sizes too large. The woman's arms formed a protective cage around the child, constructed from flesh and determination and ferocious maternal love. A flattened cardboard box rested against the wall. Permanent marqueur, unsteady lettering, single mom. Lost everything. Any help appreciated. Thank you. Marcus stopped moving. His assistant nearly collided with his back. Mr. Chin, the call begins in 7 minutes. We need to. Give me a moment, Marcus said, his voice sounding distant even to himself. He approached slowly, Italian leather shoes clicking against worn tile, uncertain why his legs carried him forward when logic demanded he continue to his meeting. Homeless individuals were everywhere in Seattle. This wasn't unique. This wasn't different. This was simply another victim of economic systems he'd helped perpetuate. Yet something about her anchored him in place. When the woman glanced up, Marcus saw no performance in her expression. No calculated desperation or rehearsed appeal. Just exhaustion that had settled into her bones after months of carrying impossible weight. Her lips were cracked from exposure. Her fingernails showed careful maintenance despite obvious poverty. She'd surrendered vanity but refused to surrender dignity. I'm sorry, she said immediately, her voice rough from cold and minimal use. We're not causing problems. We can relocate if needed. Her apology for existing struck Marcus with unexpected force. What's your name? He asked, crouching down despite his expensive trousers meeting filthy station floor. She blinked, clearly surprised that compassion wore a suit worth 5 figures. Kayla, she said softly. Kayla Morrison. And your son. The woman's arms instinctively tightened around the sleeping child. Protective. Primal. His name is Owen. He turned 7 last month. Marcus studied Kayla's face. Intelligence lived behind that exhaustion. Education evident in her precise diction. This wasn't someone raised in poverty. This was someone who'd fallen from stability and couldn't find purchase during the descent. How long have you been out here? He asked. Shame flickered across Kayla's features like lightning in darkness. 4 months. We stayed with my brother until October, but his landlord discovered us. We've been rotating between here and the shelter on 3rd Avenue when they have capacity. 4 months. A 7-year-old child sleeping on concrete for 4 months while thousands of commuters walked past daily. His assistant cleared her throat impatiently behind him. Mr. Chen, we really must. Marcus raised one hand, silencing her without breaking eye contact with Kayla. His mother's voice echoed through his thoughts. The desperate will drain you completely and smile while doing it. Perhaps it was time to test that theory personally. To discover once and for all whether his mother had spoken truth, or whether Marcus had spent 42 years believing a philosophy that protected his wealth but corroded his humanity. Marcus reached into his pocket and withdrew his wallet. Kayla's eyes widened slightly, probably expecting a few bills if fortune smiled on her. Maybe $30. Maybe $75 if the universe felt generous. Instead, Marcus extracted a sleek black credit card. Platinum edges. Embossed numbers. No spending limit. No restrictions. Just pure, unrestricted access to wealth most people couldn't fathom. Kayla stared at it as though he'd produced a weapon. Take it, Marcus said, holding the card between them like a bridge connecting separate universes. I don't understand, Kayla stammered, pulling Owen closer as if the card itself posed danger. It's yours for 24 hours, Marcus explained, his voice steady despite the chaos of doubt screaming inside his skull. Purchase whatever you want. No limits. No questions. No conditions. Kayla's hands began trembling. Sir, this has to be some kind of test. People don't simply give credit cards to strangers. Especially not to people like me. I want to discover something, Marcus said, speaking complete truth for the first time in years. I want to see what someone with nothing does when given everything. I want to test something my mother taught me. Prove her right or prove her wrong. He pressed the card into her palm. Her fingers were ice cold, roughened from exposure, shaking like leaves in wind. Why me? Kayla whispered, tears pooling in eyes that had cried themselves empty months ago. Marcus looked at Owen, sleeping peacefully despite the cold, despite the noise, despite the absolute instability of his entire existence. He thought about his own childhood, private tutors and summer camps in British Columbia, every need anticipated and met. This child possessed nothing except a mother who refused to release him. Because I'm exhausted by assumptions, Marcus said quietly. Because I want to believe goodness still exists in people who've lost everything. Prove my mother right or prove her wrong. Either way, I'll finally know the truth. Kayla closed her fingers around the card slowly, like someone touching fire for the first time, expecting burns. 24 hours, Marcus repeated, standing. His knees ached from kneeling on frozen tile. Spend whatever you want. There's no pin. Just sign your name. I'll find you here tomorrow morning. Same time, same place. His assistant looked physically ill. Mr. Chen, this is highly irregular. We should establish parameters. Legal protection. No parameters, Marcus said firmly, his eyes still locked on Kayla. No protection. Just trust. The word felt foreign on his tongue. Trust. He'd spent decades avoiding it like contagion. Kayla opened her mouth to speak, but no sound emerged. She simply clutched the card like a lifeline thrown to someone drowning, her entire body shaking with emotions Marcus couldn't begin to name. As he walked away, his mother's voice whispered warnings through his mind. She'll drain your account. She'll vanish into the night. You're a fool, Marcus. A sentimental, naive fool. But another voice, quieter, more fragile, whispered something different. What if she doesn't? Marcus didn't sleep that night. His penthouse felt vast and cold despite the climate control system that cost more than a luxury vehicle. He stood at the window, staring at Seattle's glittering skyline, wondering if somewhere down there, Kayla and Owen were finally warm for the first time in months. He pulled out his phone, opened his banking application. The credit card linked to his personal account. He could track every transaction in real time. Every purchase. Every location. Every choice she made. 4 hours. Nothing. Midnight came and went. 1 a.m. 2 a.m. 3 a.m. Still nothing. Why wasn't she spending? Was she frightened? Did she think it was a trap? Or worse, was she planning something elaborate? Waiting for stores to open? Preparing to maximize every possible dollar? At 5:47 a.m., his phone vibrated. Transaction: $42.17. Location: 24-hour Walgreens, Capitol Hill. Marcus's pulse spiked. He clicked for details, but the app only showed the amount. Not what was purchased. Just numbers. Then another notification. Transaction: $48.92. Location: Target, Northgate. Then another. Transaction: $31.55. Location: Starbucks, downtown. His chest tightened. Not with anger, but with something stranger. Anticipation. She was spending, yes, but cautiously. Modestly. These weren't the transactions of someone intoxicated by sudden wealth. These were the purchases of someone desperately practical. By 8:15 a.m., Marcus couldn't wait longer. He called his driver. "Cancel everything today," he told his assistant when she called, panicked about the missed investor meeting. "Mr. Chen, you have 6 critical appointments and the investors are threatening." "I don't care," Marcus said, surprising himself with how much he meant it. "Cancel it all. Reschedule. Handle it. I don't care how." He dressed quickly, grabbed his coat, and had his driver take him to Pioneer Square Station. But 2 blocks away, he told the driver to stop. He needed to walk. Needed to feel the cold air. Needed to remember what the city actually felt like when you weren't insulated by wealth. When he reached the southbound platform, Kayla was exactly where he'd left her. But everything else had transformed. Owen was awake now, sitting beside his mother wearing a brand new green winter jacket with fleece lining. His hair had been washed, combed neatly. He clutched a new action figure, holding it like treasure while he looked at a picture book with pages still crisp. Kayla saw Marcus approaching and immediately stood, the credit card already in her trembling hand. "I was going to return it," she said quickly, panic edging her voice. "I promise I was. I just needed to get a few things first. Essential things. Necessary things." "Keep it," Marcus said gently, raising both hands. "You still have hours remaining." Kayla's shoulders sagged with something between relief and confusion. "I don't understand you." "That makes 2 of us," Marcus admitted. He glanced at Owen, who was watching him with wide, curious hazel eyes. "You bought him a jacket." "He was freezing," Kayla said simply, as if that explained everything. And perhaps it did. Perhaps that was the only explanation that mattered. Marcus knelt to Owen's level, careful not to startle him. "That's a cool action figure. What's his name?" Owen hugged the toy tighter, shy but smiling. "Captain Thunder," he whispered. "That's an awesome name," Marcus said softly, his throat tight for reasons he couldn't explain. He looked up at Kayla. "What else did you buy?" Kayla hesitated, then slowly pulled 2 crumpled receipts from her pocket and handed them over like evidence in a trial she was certain to lose. Marcus scanned the first receipt. Boy's winter jacket. Size 7. Boy's boots. Waterproof. Socks, 4-pack. Boy's underwear. Pack of 5. Action figure toy. Picture books, 2. Crayons. 24-pack. Boy's multivitamin. First aid kit. Children's pain reliever. His throat tightened. Every single item was for Owen. Not one thing for herself. The second receipt was from a grocery store. Bread. Peanut butter. Granola bars. Bananas. Juice boxes. Crackers. String cheese. Gallon of milk. And at the bottom, something that made Marcus's breath catch. 3rd Avenue Shelter Donation Fund. $150. He looked up sharply. You donated money? Kayla's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. The shelter on 3rd Avenue. They've helped us when they could. They're constantly full, constantly running out of resources. I thought, if I had extra, even just for one day, maybe I could help them help someone else. Someone who needs it. Someone else. Marcus repeated, his voice barely functional. You're homeless. You've been sleeping on concrete for 4 months. And you gave money to help other people. There are families there with infants, Kayla said quietly. With elderly parents. With medical conditions. Some of them have it so much worse than we do. I know what it's like to need help and have nowhere to turn. If I could give back even a little, even for one day, I had to. Marcus stared at the receipts. His mother's voice was completely silent now, obliterated by the truth printed on thermal paper. This woman, who had every reason to be selfish, who had every justification to think only of herself and her son, had spent a billionaire's money on necessities, medicine, and charity. Not alcohol. Not designer clothes. Not jewelry or electronics or anything remotely self-indulgent. Just survival. Just kindness. Just love. You didn't buy anything for yourself, Marcus said, his voice strained. Not a single thing. Kayla shook her head. Owen comes first. He always comes first. I can manage. I've managed this long. But he deserves better. He deserves to be warm. To be safe. To be a child. Marcus looked at Owen, carefully studying a picture book about dinosaurs with fierce concentration. Captain Thunder tucked under his arm. A child who'd spent 7 years learning that the world was cold and unstable, but who still smiled. Still read. Still hoped. For the first time in his life, Marcus Chen felt genuinely small. Not in wealth. Not in power. But in character. In humanity. In basic human decency. This homeless single mother had more grace in her roughened fingertips than he'd cultivated in 42 years of privilege. Come with me, he said suddenly, the words tumbling out before his brain could catch up. Kayla blinked. What? Both of you. Come with me. Please. Fear flickered in her eyes. Where? Somewhere warm, Marcus said, his voice breaking slightly. Somewhere safe. Somewhere you can finally stop running. Tears spilled down Kayla's cheeks. She looked at her son, then at the man kneeling before them, and for the first time in 4 months, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, not everyone in the world was cruel. Marcus took them to the Fairmont Olympic first. Not his penthouse, that felt too invasive, too overwhelming. Instead, he booked a 2-bedroom suite overlooking the courtyard, with a full kitchen and windows that let in actual sunlight instead of fluorescent station glare. Kayla stood in the doorway, frozen, unable to cross the threshold. It's okay, Marcus said gently. This is yours. For as long as you need it. No conditions. No expectations. Just safety. Owen, unburdened by adult disbelief, ran inside immediately, his new boots squeaking on polished hardwood. He touched everything with wonder, the velvet furniture, the heavy drapes, the bowl of fresh fruit on the granite counter. Mom, look. Owen called, pointing at the bathroom. There's a bathtub. A really big one. Like in cartoons. Kayla finally stepped inside, moving like someone walking through a dream that might shatter at any moment. She set down the plastic bag that held everything she owned, literally everything that remained of her previous life, and turned to Marcus with tears streaming freely. I don't understand, she whispered, voice fracturing. Why are you doing this? What do you want from us? Marcus had been asked that question countless times in business. People always wanted to know his angle, his strategy, his hidden agenda. But standing there, watching a mother see safety for the first time in months, he realized he didn't have an agenda. He just had a choice. You reminded me what money is actually for, he said quietly. I'd forgotten. Or maybe I never knew. Kayla walked over to where Owen was experimenting with the TV remote, delighted by every channel that appeared. She knelt and wrapped her arms around her son, holding him like she'd been afraid to hold him too tightly before, as if hope itself might break. "You need to rest," Marcus said, his voice thick. "Order room service. Take a real bath. Sleep in an actual bed. I'll return tomorrow morning. We'll figure out the next steps then." "Next steps?" Kayla asked, confusion and fear mixing in her expression. "Housing. Employment. School for Owen. Healthcare. Childcare. Stability." Marcus listed them like a business plan because that's what his brain did. It solved problems systematically. "None of this has to be temporary. Unless you want it to be." Kayla stared at him like he'd just spoken a language she'd forgotten existed. "You're serious?" "Completely. You're a stranger. We're nobody. We're just two people who got unlucky and couldn't climb back out." "You were nobody," Marcus corrected gently. "Now you're someone I care about. Now you matter. Now you have someone who won't let you fall again." Kayla opened her mouth to argue, to protest, to explain all the reasons this couldn't be real. But exhaustion won. 4 months of hypervigilance and fear and sleeping with one eye open came crashing down. She sank onto the sofa, her body folding like someone who'd been holding up the sky and could finally let it rest on something stronger. "Thank you," she whispered, and the words carried the weight of 4 months of suffering compressed into 2 syllables. Marcus nodded, his throat too tight to speak. "Get some rest, Kayla. You're safe now. Both of you." As he left the suite, he heard Owen's delighted laughter echoing behind him, and Marcus Chen realized he was smiling. Not the calculated, camera-ready smile he used in boardrooms, but something genuine. Something human. Something his face had almost forgotten how to do. That night, Marcus made phone calls. Not to attorneys or PR teams or financial advisors, but to people who actually helped: social workers, housing advocates, job placement specialists, education coordinators. He used his name not as a weapon, but as a key to open doors that had been slammed in Kayla's face for months. By morning, he had options. Real, tangible, sustainable options. He returned to the Fairmont at 9 a.m., carrying coffee and a bag of fresh pastries from a bakery Owen would love. When Kayla opened the door, she looked transformed. Not in appearance, she still wore the same worn clothes, but in posture. In the way she stood straighter. In the way her eyes held something other than perpetual fear. Owen was drawing at the table, humming a song about superheroes. Captain Thunder sat proudly beside him, overseeing the artwork. "Morning," Marcus said, handing Kayla the coffee. She took it with both hands, inhaling the steam like a memory she'd thought was lost forever. Real coffee from an actual coffee shop. "I forgot what that was like." They sat together while Owen colored, and Marcus laid out the plan. A 2-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood near excellent schools. Subsidized initially, but with a pathway to full independence. Job training programs matched to her skills. She'd mentioned once working in graphic design. Healthcare coverage. Owen enrolled in 2nd grade at a public school with strong ratings and wraparound care programs. Kayla listened in stunned silence, tears running down her face, dripping into coffee that had grown cold while Marcus talked. "This isn't charity," Marcus clarified, echoing what he'd been telling himself all night. "It's an investment. You're intelligent, capable, and resilient. You just need a foundation to rebuild from. A place to stand so you can start climbing again." "I don't know how to repay you," Kayla said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You already did," Marcus replied. "You showed me that goodness still exists in people. That desperation doesn't automatically create monsters. That my mother was wrong about everything that actually matters." Kayla shook her head, more tears falling. "I just bought what Owen needed." "Exactly," Marcus said. "You had unlimited wealth for 24 hours, and you chose love over greed. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How many people would have drained that card buying things for themselves and walked away without looking back? Kayla looked at her son, carefully coloring a picture of a spaceship, his small tongue poking out in concentration. He's all I have. He's all that matters. Everything I do, every choice I make, it's all for him. I know, Marcus said softly. I saw it in those receipts. I saw it in that donation to the shelter. You could have taken everything, but you gave anyway. That's not just good. That's extraordinary. 3 weeks later, Kayla and Owen moved into their new apartment. 2 bedrooms on the 4th floor of a clean, well-maintained building with a small park nearby. It wasn't luxury, laminate counters, standard appliances, fixtures from a catalog, but it was theirs. Walls that didn't move. A door that locked from the inside. Heat that worked. Windows that let in light without letting in wind. Marcus helped them move in, carrying boxes, assembling furniture from IKEA, laughing when Owen insisted on supervising by placing Captain Thunder on every flat surface and declaring it properly arranged. He's very particular about interior design, Kayla joked, watching her son organize action figures with the seriousness of an architect. Marcus didn't mind. For the first time in years, he felt useful. Not powerful. Not influential. Not wealthy. Just useful. Just present. Just human. That evening, after Owen fell asleep in his new bed, his very first bed that wasn't a couch or a floor or someone else's charity, Kayla and Marcus stood in the small living room, exhaustion and gratitude hanging thick between them. I start the workforce development program next Monday, Kayla said. Digital marketing and design. Stable work. Good benefits. A real career path. You're going to be incredible at it, Marcus said, and he meant it. Kayla looked around the apartment, her eyes glistening in the lamplight. I keep waiting to wake up back at the subway station. To realize this was all some elaborate dream I had while freezing on concrete. It's real, Marcus assured her. It's yours. No one can take it away. She turned to face him, her voice breaking around the edges. Why did you choose us? Out of all the people you could have helped. Out of everyone in the city who's struggling. Why me and Owen? Marcus had thought about that question every day since that morning at the subway station. He'd analyzed it like a business decision, broken it down into logical components. But the truth was simpler and more complicated than logic. Because you looked at your son the way my father used to look at me, he said quietly, before my mother died. Before he became bitter and taught me that trust was weakness. You looked at Owen like nothing else in the world existed. Like you'd burn down the universe to keep him safe. And I realized I'd spent 42 years believing people like you didn't exist anymore. Kayla wiped her eyes. You gave us a future. No, Marcus said. You already had a future. I just helped you reach it. You did the hard part. You survived. You kept Owen safe. You stayed good when the world gave you every reason to be bitter. That's all you. I just removed some obstacles. Months passed. Kayla completed her training program with distinction, landed a position at a Seattle design firm with full benefits and regular hours. Owen thrived in 2nd grade, making friends, bringing home artwork, no longer carrying the weight of homelessness in his small shoulders. Marcus visited often, not as a benefactor checking on an investment, but as a friend. Someone who attended Owen's school play where he portrayed a tree with complete seriousness. Someone who helped Kayla navigate apartment maintenance when the dishwasher malfunctioned. Someone who showed up on difficult days and didn't need to be asked. He learned things about himself he'd never known. That he enjoyed cooking simple meals more than expensive restaurants. That children's laughter was better than shareholder applause. That watching someone rebuild their life was more satisfying than watching his portfolio grow. One evening, sitting on Kayla's modest couch while Owen showed him his science project about volcanoes, Kayla handed him something. His credit card. I kept it, she admitted, blushing. I know I should have returned it weeks ago, but I was scared. Scared that if I gave it back, all of this would disappear. That it was only real as long as I held on to that piece of plastic. Marcus smiled, closing her fingers back around the card. Keep it. Marcus, I can't. Emergency fund, he said simply. For Owen. For unexpected expenses. For peace of mind. You've proven exactly what you do with it. You've proven I can trust you more than I trust most people I've known for decades. Kayla stared at the card, then at him. You really mean that? Completely. She wiped her eyes, laughing through tears. You're the strangest billionaire I've ever met. I'm the only billionaire you've ever met, Marcus pointed out. Fair point. Kayla smiled, then grew serious. You changed our lives. You know that, right? Not just the apartment or the job or the stability. You changed how Owen sees the world. He doesn't think all people are cruel anymore. He thinks there are good people who help when you need it most. Marcus felt his chest tighten. What about you? What do you think? Kayla was quiet for a long moment, watching Owen carefully paint his volcano with red and orange streaks. I think, she said slowly, that you gave me something more valuable than money. You gave me back my faith in humanity. For 4 months, I believed the world was a cold, heartless place that didn't care if we lived or died. You proved me wrong. You showed me that kindness still exists. That not everyone walks past suffering. That some people actually stop and help. You did the same for me, Marcus said softly. You proved my mother wrong. You showed me that desperation doesn't automatically corrupt people. That poverty doesn't destroy goodness. That some people, when given everything, choose to give rather than take. Owen looked up from his project, paint on his hands and satisfaction on his face. Mr. Marcus, do you want to help me with the lava flow? Marcus glanced at Kayla, who nodded with a smile. I'd love to, he said, moving to sit beside Owen on the floor. As he helped a 7-year-old boy create a papier-mâché volcano, Marcus Chen realized something profound. He'd spent 42 years accumulating wealth, believing it would fill the emptiness inside him. He'd built an empire, amassed billions, achieved everything his mother had told him would bring satisfaction. But sitting on the floor of a modest apartment, with paint on his expensive watch and a child's laughter in his ears, Marcus finally understood what his mother had been wrong about. Wealth wasn't measured in dollars or properties or stock portfolios. Wealth was measured in moments like this. In connections that mattered. In lives touched and changed. In the simple act of showing up for people who needed someone to show up. Later that night, after Owen had gone to bed proudly displaying his completed volcano, Kayla walked Marcus to the door. Thank you, she said again, the phrase she'd spoken countless times but never seemed adequate for what she truly felt. Thank you, Marcus replied, for reminding me what it means to be human. For showing me that my mother's philosophy was poison dressed as wisdom. For giving me a reason to believe people are worth believing in. Kayla hugged him then, not the formal embrace of gratitude, but the genuine hug of friendship. You're always welcome here. You know that, right? This isn't about what you've done for us. You're family now. You're Owen's family. You're my family. Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. Family. He'd spent decades surrounding himself with employees, associates, business partners, people who wanted something from him. But standing in the doorway of a modest apartment, being called family by a woman he'd met on a subway platform, Marcus finally understood what wealth actually meant. It meant having somewhere to belong. Someone to care about. A reason to wake up that extended beyond profit margins and stock prices. I'll see you this weekend, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. We're still on for the aquarium, right? Owen's excited voice called from his bedroom. Don't forget, Mr. Marcus. You promised. Marcus laughed. I won't forget. I promise. As he rode the elevator down, Marcus pulled out his phone and opened his banking app. He looked at the credit card, the one he'd given Kayla that February morning on a test that had changed both their lives. Total spent in 24 hours, $347.81. He'd given her access to billions. She'd spent less than $400. And every single purchase had been an act of love. Marcus smiled and closed the app. His mother had taught him that trust was a currency fools spent freely. That poverty corrupted. That desperation made thieves of everyone. But Kayla Morrison had taught him something different. Something truer. That the greatest wealth wasn't in taking, but in giving. That true character revealed itself not in abundance, but in scarcity. That some people, even when they had nothing, still found ways to care for others. And that sometimes, the greatest investment you could make wasn't in stocks or properties or business ventures. It was in people. In faith. In the simple, radical act of trusting someone when every voice in your head told you not to. Marcus stepped out into the Seattle night, the rain falling softly around him, and for the first time in 42 years, he felt genuinely wealthy. Not because of the billions in his accounts, but because he'd finally learned what it meant to be rich in the things that actually mattered.